What's going on, everyone? It is the Derf, and I just want to welcome everyone to Heresy. It is finally here. I have been extremely anxious waiting for this to finally happen. We've got a lot of new content to go through, as well as new weapons, a new artifact, which will hopefully lead to more builds and ultimately more fun. I know so far I've been enjoying it, and learning all the ins and outs of the seasonal activities has been extremely overwhelming. But today I've got a arc build for you guys that is easy to set up. It is very potent. It takes advantage of the new aspect for Warlocks, and you don't need a whole lot of specialized equipment or a specific gameplay loop. So if you've been looking for something out there, I'm going to take it into a little bit of a different route than what you see currently being pushed all over YouTube. I'm going to give you my version of a goated arc build for your Warlock. If you do find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know someone who is looking for a good arc build for their Guardian in this new Destiny arena, please send them my way, or please share the video with them. So let's get on into it and let's get the new builds started. All right. We're starting off with the Stormcaller Warlock subclass. The super of choice I'm running is Storm Trance. Chain arc lightning from your hands to electrify targets, and you cast a jolting shockwave underneath you. Jolt damage stuns overload champions. So right off the bat, I've got a champion handled for you guys. For the melee, ball lightning is what you want, because while amplified, ball lightning releases additional lightning strikes before detonating. For the grenade, I've got the flashbang grenade. I want to have a way to stun unstoppable champions right off the bat. As this continues, you're going to see that we're going to have multiple ways of dealing with all the champions. For aspects, I've got the electrostatic mind. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an ionic trace. Collecting an ionic trace makes you amplified. With this aspect, you are essentially going to be amplified all the time, which means you are going to be collecting ionic traces all the time. And ionic traces grant you ability energy. Alrighty, the new arc aspect, Ionic Sentry. Defeat targets with kinetic or arc weapons or arc abilities to charge up an arc turret that periodically chains lightning between nearby targets, granting a stack of bolt charge with each hit. You press your grenade and you deploy the Ionic Sentry, blinding nearby targets on initial impact. The closest thing that I can compare this to is Gunpowder Gamble for Solar Hunter. Only in this instance, it's basically an arc version of Gunpowder Gamble for your Warlock. This thing is extremely awesome to watch. It is very reactive to the environment, and you're going to see just how powerful this is. And oh, by the way, you're going to be able to blind on initial cast, which stuns unstoppable champions. So another way to handle the unstoppable champions. For aspects, I've got Spark of Brilliance. Defeating a blinded target with precision damage creates a blinding explosion. I am taking advantage of the plus 10 intellect, but I don't really need it for this build because it is a roaming super. And like I said before, when blinded, unstoppable champions are stunned. Next up, we've got Spark of Shock. Your arc grenades jolt targets. This is kind of a calculated fragment. You don't necessarily need to have this because you have other ways that you are going to be able to stun overload champions, but it is a nice addition to have just in case you don't have an Ionic Sentry available for you. Spark of Ions is next. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an ionic trace. Yet another way to get your ability energy back quick. Last but not least, Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. Collecting an ionic trace gives you a stack of bolt charge. Now this is kind of a bummer. You get a -10 to strength, but you're not going to be relying on your melee very often. You're mainly going to be using your melee to do intermittent damage to enemies that are in front of you, but you're not going to be leaning on it as a main way to clear the battlefield, so to speak. For the armor stats, I have focused about as evenly as I can between 4 stats, but your main stat is going to be resilience. I've got that at a T10, and also discipline, which is also at a T10. You are going to be using your grenade a lot, so make sure you have your grenade and your resilience, or discipline and resilience, as high as possible. I'm also taking advantage of my T5 in recovery, as well as a T6 in intellect, which again, I don't really need that. That's just kind of how the armor rolled for me in this build. And as far as the strength goes, you're not really going to be hurting at a T3. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are that low, don't sweat. You're going to be just fine. I'm going to start with the armor first. First up on the helmet, make sure your siphon mods are matching the weapons that you're going to be using. Because of the new artifact, strand weapons are going to be extremely viable in virtually every activity. So if you are running a strand weapon like I am, make sure you have a siphon on. If you are hopefully running the arc weapons that I've got here today, you have a harmonic siphon. These two, just put whichever you need specifically for your build. If you're lacking in discipline though, I highly recommend putting on a discipline mod. And given the situation with the seasonal activity, I recommend having a heavy ammo finder perk on, just to help you get some of that extra heavy ammo back quicker. The exotic getaway artist. Now, I'm going to get a little bit of flack because most of YouTube, if you turn on YouTube right now, everyone is telling you to go for Geomag stabilizers. I'm here to tell you that they are not the only way to do damage. They are not the only way to do DPS, and they are not the only way to clear the battlefield. Ionic traces are going to be popping up like crazy, and as a result, you're going to be getting your super back even faster than you would be if you were using Chaos Reach. Getaway Artist is going to help you because it's got that arc sentient soul doing damage for you, and because you are using a roaming super, any damage the arc soul does is going to give you super energy back. If you stack that on with the Ionic Sentry, you can run the Sentry and the Sentient Soul at the same time. In fact, I've been able to put down 2 Ionic Sentries and basically have a back-to-back Sentient Soul going at the same time. As far as the mods go, it's kind of up to you what you want to do. But I've got the heavy-handed because I'm going to be consuming my grenades, so I'm not going to benefit from an orb of power for using it. And also, I've got impact induction. Causing damage with a powered melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. Again, normally I try to have one of each with heavy-handed as well as firepower, but because we are using Getaway Artist, it is not necessary to have the firepower equipped. It is necessary, however, to put on a harmonic loader because you want to be able to reload as fast as possible. If you, by chance, are not amplified, it is going to help you. For the chest armor, pretty standard setup. I've got a harmonic reserve mod added because I am running an arc heavy weapon. And then your damage resistances are pretty much going to be what I'm showing you right now in the nether. But If you want to drop the harmonic reserves and put on the void resistance or even the strand resistance, because you're going to see some strand damage in the nether, that would be certainly welcome as far as a damage resistance, because they do hit pretty hard when those subjugators do come after you. As far as the legs go, I recommend with the seasonal activity putting on recuperation. Replenish health each time you pick up an orb of power. Now, there is a bug going around that is a known issue that Bungie did address that says that health restoration effects are a little bit buggy right now, and they're working on a fix possibly next week to get to us as far as ways to replenish our health, because the ways that we have to replenish our health are not doing the job that they intended it to do, or quite honestly what Guardians were hoping for. So keep your eye on that, but I still recommend running a recuperation, especially if you are running the seasonal activity. Innervation is a no-brainer. I want my grenade back as quickly as possible. And Absolution, normally I would have a scavenger mod, but because I'm not clutching on my heavy except for the overload buff, I'm going to forego that and put on an Absolution. Reduce all ability cooldowns each time you pick up an orb of power. And like I said before, basically in all of these armors that I'm showing you, put on the stat boost that you need the most to get you where you want to be. Last but not least is the Warlock Bond. I do recommend putting on Font of Restoration. Again, I understand that there's a bug right now with health regeneration, but it's a good idea to have this on, even if you're at a T5, because one orb of power bumps you up to a T8. So it's worth it. Next up, I've got the Bomber. Reduce grenade cooldown when using your class ability. That's a no-brainer because I'm going to be using my grenade, well, I'm going to be consuming it, I should say, on a very regular basis. And last but not least, put on Reaper. Shortly after using your class ability, your next weapon, Final Blow, spawns an orb of power. You'll also notice that I've got a little bump to my strength because I did take advantage of the Artifice armor that Eris had. So if you did miss out on that, hopefully you'll get a chance to pick that up. But that was available all the way up until reset earlier this week. Moving on to weapons. Alrighty. One of my favorite fusion rifles is something that I've got equipped here, the Scatter Signal. Now, there's going to be debates on what you can use, so I'm just going to go through all the options that you can use for this specific build that you can pretty much switch in and out with ease and without really changing up fundamentally what you're doing on the battlefield. But for Scatter Signal, I recommend Overflow as well as Controlled Burst. I have a counterbalance on to max out at a 100 recoil, and the charge time is simply awesome at 500. Rapid fire frame, this thing puts out amazing damage, and it was a fan favorite during, I'm going to have to go back and double check that, but I'm pretty sure it was Season of the Wish. Because everyone was using that in the coil. Yes, in the coil. So if you don't have a scatter signal though, I highly recommend any one of the following. The Riptide you can get from Lord Shaxx. I recommend auto-loading holster and chill clip. And the reason I'm pushing fusion rifles first is because they stun unstoppable champions. Now, I understand you're not going to be seeing unstoppable champions all the time. So if you don't want to use those and you want to put another strand option on, that is what I'm telling you to put on first. Put strand on, and if you have a strand fusion rifle, put that on in front of everything else because you're going to be proccing unraveling rounds. But if you don't, right now Banshee is selling, let me see if I can find it real quick. Right now Banshee is selling Nox Perennial. It is not the best roll out there. However, if you are looking for a strand fusion rifle, you can go and pick that up real quick, and you will still get the buff to unraveling rounds when you pick up an orb of power. And I'm going to go over that here in a second. As far as the main ad clear weapon, Vantage Point, a staple in a lot of my arc builds. For this build, I am taking advantage of the jolting feedback dealing with the overloads. So between my first weapon and this weapon, I should be able to handle overloads and unstoppable champs with ease. Last but not least, I've got the Thunderlord. The reason I have the Thunderlord, again, is a way to be able to stun overloads. And also, they reworked it a little bit with some different words. Final blows generate lightning strikes and grant a stack of bolt charge. So this is a way to get your Ionic Sentry back even faster. Now, as far as substitutes, because machine guns have the stunning capability, it's not entirely necessary that you put on Thunderlord. If you have a Swarm, which you can get from Zavala, I recommend that. The Eleactic Principle. Occasionally Zur will sell this. I've also seen Banshee sell this, but this was a craftable seasonal weapon a couple of seasons ago. If you weren't around for that, though, don't feel bad. You can still pick up the Swarm, or you can put on Watchful Eye. I just got this thing literally before making this video. It's not the greatest roll, but Eddy Current is something that I'm always willing to take, and because I'm not going to use this for ad clear, I don't necessarily need a splash damage bonus. So in a pinch, if I wanted to, I can use this for DPS. Again, it's not going to be king of DPS, but it is an option, and it takes advantage of your arc ammo buff. Now, if you were worried about dealing with anti-barriers, there's two things to understand real quick. With the changes in the artifact, your sidearms pierce barriers as well as shields. So you can always take down the scatter signal and put on the call or Mikkel's reverence. Both of these inherently will pierce barrier shields. The only downside to that is you do not have a way to stun unstoppable champions, only with your flashbang grenade or the blinding explosion from the Ionic Sentry upon initial cast. So I recommend putting on a Strand Fusion Rifle and foregoing the sidearms just for this particular just for this specific point in time that we're creating our first build here, if you will. And the reason for that is because we're not seeing barriers in the arena activity that are really causing us any kind of headaches. But if you are going into an activity where there are going to be barriers, it is something to consider. However, if you have the Trespasser, which you can get from the Monument of Lost Light, you can drop off the Thunderlord and put on the Swarm or any of these others, and you can equip the Trespasser. The Trespasser is an excellent sidearm. If you have the Catalyst unlocked, it's even a little bit more powerful than what you see on the screen right here, but this will pierce the barriers as well. So you'll be able to pierce barriers with this. You'll be able to stun unstoppables with your fusion rifle, and with any machine gun, you'll be able to stun the overloads. So that is one way you can get all three champs stunned with this build. However, I think the way that we've got it set up right now with Vantage Point and Thunderlord, you're going to be doing just fine. You're not using Scatter Signal or your fusion rifle of choice, I should say, to do anything else other than stun the unstoppables and do a little bit of extra damage to beefier yellow bars. Last but certainly not least, the Tablet of Ruin, our new artifact. As you can see, I've got almost the whole thing unlocked, but that's not going to be able to stop me from showing you guys how to work the perks so that you can build into this build. I've got Unstoppable Fusion, Overload Machine Guns, and Piercing Sidearms in the first column. Overclock and load, while you're amplified or have bolt charge arc weapons gain increased handling and reload speed. I also have Unraveling Orbs. We've been asking for Strand to get a little bit of love in the artifact, and they gave it a little bit of love. Anytime you pick up an Orb of Power, your Strand weapons get unraveling rounds. The reason I've got a Strand fusion rifle is because when I pick up that Orb of Power, that fusion rifle is now going to be able to pierce barrier champions. So, in theory, because it is a 10-second buff, if you're face to face with a barrier champ and you have just picked up an Orb of Power, you can use your fusion rifle to deal with the champ. And you won't get interrupted once they pop their barrier. Next up, I've got the Dielectric. Defeating arc debuff targets grants Bolt Charge. That's a no-brainer. I want Bolt Charge after Bolt Charge after Bolt Charge because I want my Ionic Sentry back as fast as possible. Next up, we got the Photonic Flare. Defeating an exhausted or severed target with arc damage releases a blinding burst. So this is where you're going to be able to pair this with the Strand Unraveling Orbs. So if you have a Sever perk on your Strand weapon, for example, you theoretically can double dip between these two right here. Last, for this build anyways, I've got Flashover. When you gain maximum bolt charge, you also become amplified. Lightning bolts deal more damage. So it is kind of an arc heavy, we'll say, so far artifact. You get quite a few benefits from perks for arc specifically. Now, when I unlock my next 4 perks, next up is going to be the Horde Shuttle, which is damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a Threadling. I'm also going to put on Defibrillating Blast. Stunning a champion grants maximum stacks of bolt charge, triggers an arc bolt that heals you and jolts combatants that it damages. And I'm also going to... where is it here? Well, there's a couple of things. Particle Reconstruction is going to be popular. Dealing sustained damage with fusion rifles or linear fusion rifles partially refuels the magazine from reserves and grants them bonus damage for a short duration against the target. This is going to be a hard one to put down if you are running a fusion rifle as your kind of backup DPS weapon. Also, your unstoppable champion weapon. So Particle Reconstruction is probably going to be the one that I recommend going with, above all else. And then I'm going to probably recommend either the Elemental Supercharger or the Defibrillating Blast. The other one is mainly for Void, and, well, the Heavy Ordnance Regeneration is also a popular possibility. Because I'm using a machine gun, this might be a good one to put on for you as well. So Particle Reconstruction is probably not going to be the one that I have on. I'm going to probably have Heavy Ordnance Regeneration and Defibrillating Blast. What I'll end up doing once I get the rest of these unlocked is I'll make a little clip video using the artifact with those 2 extra selections, as well as my other option, which is Hold the Line. While surrounded, machine guns and glaives gain increased reload speed, and final blows heal you. That's going to be my 4th unlock. That'll put me at 12 right there. So it's important. Do what you can to get all this stuff unlocked, but what you see here is going to be plenty to get you started. So if it's taking you a while to figure out the Nether Arena, don't worry. It's very well documented all over social media and YouTube that people are, let's just use the word, struggling. So just put on the perks one at a time as you get them unlocked, and I'm telling you, this thing is going to absolutely wreck. In the Nether Arena as well as across the galaxy, so long as you're not necessarily running a GM, or like the hardest possible content imaginable. This is a good, general, solid build. So that is the build. There's going to be a lot of debate If you look all over YouTube right now, everyone is telling you to use Geomag and Chaos Reach. And I can say that is a very, very strong build. But I feel like I do a lot better damage over the course of a longer period of time with what I've got set up now. There's never a low in damage output, specifically because of Getaway Artist here and my Sentient Soul. Once the Sentient Soul is run out, I can throw down the Ionic Sentry on top of it. So you're not going to consume your grenade, much like Gunpowder Gamble for Solar Hunter. So you can use your little flashbang grenade to call down 2 different types of sentries, essentially, and continue to deal damage the entire time, which is going to give you your super back even faster, as well as amplify you, give you all your abilities. I mean, it's just going to be a ridiculous cycle of just lightning and unraveling rounds everywhere. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to take us into the Altars of Sorrow. I understand that you're probably wanting me to take this build directly into the Nether Arena. However, because of how far I'm not currently on the campaign, I'm just going to give you a synopsis of what it's going to look like. And I'm telling you, just using it the little bit that I've used it in the Nether Arena, it 100% works. I'm just going to show you with a few more frequent enemies. If you did find anything helpful with this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there, again, that is looking for a good build to get started on Heresy, you absolutely do not need to have the entire artifact unlocked in order to have this build kick in as much as it does already. So I'm going to get us over here to the Altars of Sorrow, and we're going to see how this thing fares. Alright, so I have just gotten into the beginning of Altars here, and we're going to get it going right away. I'm going to throw down my my Sentient Soul, and I'm going to get to work. You can see even with that little bit, I've got multiple Ionic Traces already coming back to me, which is granting me ability energy, and also, there you go. That is the Bolt Charge, or that is the Ionic Sentry right there. You can see this thing is just chaining. And by the way, I've got my Sentient Soul back at the same time. So this is going to be back-to-back sentries attaching to you at really any given time. And we haven't even gotten to the busy part of the altars yet. So the way that you're seeing this right now, when you're in the Dreadnought, or yeah, when you're in the Dreadnought, or you're and there you go, we got the unraveling rounds as well. But as I was saying, once you're in the Dreadnought, you are going to be in certain situations where there's going to be a lot of enemies coming at you from a lot of different angles. So if you haven't stepped foot in there yet, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but just understand that these turrets are going to be pivotal in pretty much anywhere you find yourself. And unfortunately I just airmailed that one, but you can see it took me virtually no time to get my super back. I've got a Sentient Soul on deck because I've got my grenade recharged. Didn't even have to use my melee for anything. And I've got my Rift in case I need to heal. Now again, in the Dreadnought right now, healing effects are not... they're not triggering the way that either Bungie intended on them or that Guardians are hoping for them. It's actually a little bit of both right now. So having that class ability energy is going to be pivotal, but you may find yourself not getting healed. And you can see someone else is using the turret as well, the new Ionic Sentry. But it's just that simple. I mean, I'm really not doing anything that's difficult. There's not really a gameplay loop. I'm using my vantage point as my main ad clear, and when I need to, I'm busting out the fusion rifle to do a little extra DPS. So, but you can see when I call out that that bolt charge, that ionic turret, it's not taking away from my grenade energy on top. So I'm going to, real quickly, I'm going to try to demonstrate that right now. I'm going to get one procced, and then show you guys how it's going to look in real time. Now again, it may take me a minute to get this to proc, so I apologize. Just trying to do this in real time so you guys can see it firsthand. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to use it. And here we go. Boom. So I've got two turrets right there that are doing damage for me. If my super was exhausted at this point, it would be racking up the super energy simply just by doing damage to combatants everywhere. So just something to think about. I know everyone is very high on geomag stabilizers right now, but I have a hard time putting this down. And oh, by the way, that's my second one. So I have two of them activated right now. And this can be your gameplay loop. You can see I'm not being extremely aggressive. I'm not doing anything that requires complicated mechanics. I'm simply just taking what the game is giving me. And even with two other Guardians that are definitely more aggressive, sharing the battlefield with me, I'm not hurting to get my ability energy back. So when you find yourself in the seasonal activity, given the amount of running around you're going to have to do, as well as the higher amount of enemies than what you're going to see here in Altars of Sorrow at the beginning stages, I mean, you're going to be getting your abilities back, I mean, extremely quickly. So I'm going to use my super right now and just show you guys how fast you're going to get it back. Anyone that's used this super in the last season knows, you know, roaming supers did get a buff for how fast they get regenerated. But with everything going on as far as the... See, and that's just beautiful right there. With everything going on as far as the bolt charges, the ionic sentries, and there's another one. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to say. If you do fire it too close to yourself, you're going to be blinding yourself. It's not really a big showstopper, but just something to be aware of. Make sure you throw it out a couple of feet before, don't throw it right at your feet, or you'll end up blinding yourself, and then, you know, you'll have to stop firing for a minute because you won't be able to see. But it looks like my teammates decided to take this round off, and you can see I've already got my super back. I've got my next, I got a full bolt charge, or I got 3 bolt charges, as well as an ionic sentry ready to go. And I'm sure once I get this all done, I'm going to have, yep, I'll have my grenade back in mere seconds. So that is the build. Not incredibly difficult to use. Nothing groundbreaking as far as anything that you have to do or mechanics wise or anything like that. It's just a good solid build that takes advantage of the new aspect, a weapon from last season, and an exotic machine gun that everyone loves to use in just about every kind of activity that allows for the Thunderlord's existence. If you did find anything helpful with this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there that could benefit from a video like this, please send them my way or share this video with them. This is more of a general build because we haven't gotten too far into Heresy yet. and I know a lot of people are going to be taking quite a bit of time figuring out the Dreadnought and unlocking, their artifact. It's going to take a little bit of time. If you are like me, you have a regular job, you've got, other things going on in your life besides the game, it's going to take you a minute to unlock everything. So don't worry, there's still plenty of you that are going to be able to put more artifact perks on than even I've got. But for those that are like me that don't have it completely unlocked yet but are looking for a good solid build that they can take into any activity currently right now, this is going to fit the bill for just about everything. I don't recommend taking this into a master raid or anything like that. Not until you get leveled up in power. But moreover so because we still have bugs that are going on in the game that Bungie hasn't corrected yet. So I recommend just hanging tight and joining some of the general content first and taking this build and just watching the entire battlefield get electrified. So thank you guys for your support. I'll be doing more GM quality builds here in the coming weeks. But for now, go ahead and take this build into your generalized seasonal activity, into any activity that you're trying to figure out how to take advantage of the artifact perks so you're just as powerful as last season. And most of all, just enjoy the new challenges. That is part of the Destiny experience, everyone. Until next time, you guys be safe out there. I'll see you.